In Italy, in 1944, a lone man in shabby civilian clothes wanders out into a field between two armies in full view of German gunners and begins to tend the crops. He stops to tie his shoelace. He stands up and shakes his fist at both sides as if cursing the whole war. He looks like a bewildered old farmer caught in the fighting. He is none of those things. He is a Canadian commando, and as he kneels in the dirt, he is quietly splicing a severed telephone wire back together so he can keep calling down artillery on the very German guns watching him work. His name was Tommy Prince. He became one of the most decorated soldiers in Canadian history, and one of the most decorated Indigenous soldiers of the entire war. And when it was all over, his country let him die poor and very nearly forgotten in a hostel. This is the story of an Ojibwe hunter from a Manitoba reserve who became a ghost on the battlefield, and the long bitter injustice that waited for him at home, Sergeant Tommy Prince. It begins on the Canadian prairie in a community the rest of Canada had decided to ignore. Thomas George Prince was born on the 25th of October, 1915, near Petersfield, Manitoba, a member of the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation and a descendant of Chief Peguis, a famous and respected leader of his people. He grew up, like so many Indigenous children in Canada at that time, in deep poverty. This was an era when Indigenous people in Canada were stripped of basic rights, confined to reserves, their children taken to residential schools designed to erase their language and their culture, treated in the eyes of the law and of much of society as something less than full citizens. The injustice ran so deep that a First Nations man could not even vote in a federal election without first giving up his legal status as an Indian, without in effect signing away who he was. That was the country Tommy Prince was born into, and the country he would one day fight for. But the land gave him something his country tried to deny him. His father taught him to hunt and to track, and from boyhood Tommy Prince became extraordinary at it, moving in total silence through bush and snow, reading the faintest signs in the ground, and shooting with a precision that astonished everyone who ever watched him. By the accounts that survive, he could put a bullet through a target the size of a coin. He could slip through the wild without making a sound and vanish into the cover of the land as if he had never been there. These were skills a hard life on the reserve had drilled into him, and they were, though no one yet knew it, the precise skills of a world-class commando. When the Second World War came, Tommy Prince tried to enlist. Indigenous men volunteered in remarkable numbers, despite everything their country had done to them. But many were turned away at first, and Prince himself was rejected before he was finally accepted in 1940. He began in the Royal Canadian Engineers, but Tommy Prince was far too gifted a soldier for ordinary work. So when the call went out for volunteers for a new and secret elite unit, he stepped forward and won a place in one of the most fearsome formations of the entire war. The 1st Special Service Force, a joint American and Canadian commando brigade, hand-picked from the toughest volunteers and trained savagely in mountaineering, demolitions, parachuting, hand-to-hand combat, and above all, stealth. The German soldiers who faced them in the dark would give them a name that stuck forever: the Devil's Brigade. They were, in many ways, the ancestors of modern special forces, and they specialized in exactly the kind of warfare Tommy Prince had been preparing for his whole life without knowing it. Silent night raids, infiltration deep behind enemy lines, slipping in among the enemy and out again before anyone realized they had ever been there at all. The brigade trained in the mountains of Montana, where the volunteers were pushed to the edge of human endurance and beyond, and where Tommy Prince's skills, the ones the reserve had given him, suddenly made him not an outsider but a standout. The hunter's silence, the marksman's eye, the tracker's patience. In this unit, those were the most valuable things a man could possess. In Italy, the Germans who faced them came to fear their night raids so deeply that they reportedly nicknamed them the Black Devils, and whispered that these men could appear and vanish in the dark like ghosts. They even claimed to find on their dead a calling card the raiders left behind. The brigade was small, but its reputation was enormous. And Tommy Prince was one of its quietest, deadliest members. He had a gift, his comrades said, for the impossible patience the work demanded. Where other men fidgeted and gave themselves away, Prince could lie motionless for hours, watching, waiting, completely at home in the dark and the cold. The land that had raised him had made him, without anyone intending it, into a perfect instrument of this strange new kind of war. The Devil's Brigade was sent to Italy, into the grinding mountain campaign of 1943 and 1944, around the Anzio beachhead, where the Allies were locked in a brutal stalemate with German forces dug deep into the surrounding hills. And it was at Anzio that Tommy Prince did the thing the legend remembers best. In February 1944, near the Anzio front, Prince volunteered to run an observation post far out ahead of the Allied lines, to spot German positions and call down artillery fire on them. He laid a telephone wire some 1,400 meters out to an abandoned farmhouse that sat almost on top of the German guns, only a couple of hundred meters from an enemy artillery position. From that farmhouse, for days on end, Tommy Prince reported German positions back down the wire, and Allied shells rained down with deadly accuracy. He was a single man, alone, hidden in a ruined building deep inside enemy territory, serving as the eyes of an entire artillery barrage. Then the shelling cut his telephone line. Without it, he was blind and useless. And the obvious response, crawling out under fire to find the break, was a very good way to get killed. So Tommy Prince did something far more audacious. He decided to repair the wire in broad daylight, in plain sight, by simply becoming somebody else. He found civilian clothing, the worn outfit of an Italian peasant farmer, pulled it on, and walked out of the farmhouse into the open field, in full view of both armies. Just a lone civilian, apparently tending his own land, seemingly oblivious to the war raging around him. He bent down to weed the crops. He wandered slowly along the path of the buried wire, and when he reached the break, he crouched as though to tie his bootlace, and spliced the telephone cable back together with his bare hands, right there in the dirt, while German gunners watched and saw nothing but a harmless old farmer. By one beloved version of the story, he even stood up and shook his fist toward both sides at once, at the Germans and at the Allies alike, as if to curse all these soldiers for trampling his fields. It was the perfect cover. Who, after all, would suspect the angry old farmer of being an Allied commando, wiring up an artillery strike under their noses? With the line restored, Prince walked calmly back to his farmhouse and resumed calling down fire. His observation over those days is credited with the destruction of multiple German positions. For this, the angry farmer of Anzio was awarded the military medal for bravery. But Tommy Prince was not finished. Later in 1944, the Devil's Brigade moved into southern France, and Prince added a second feat that reads like something out of an adventure novel. Sent out to locate an enemy encampment, Prince went deep behind the German lines on a long, lonely reconnaissance, by some accounts covering enormous distances on foot over brutal terrain, with little or no sleep, slipping unseen through enemy-held country. He found the German positions, fixed their exact location, and made it all the way back. And then he guided his own unit back in to strike them, helping to lead the attack that overran the position and took prisoners. For his actions in France, the United States awarded Tommy Prince the Silver Star, one of America's highest decorations for gallantry in action. 2 awards from 2 different nations for a kind of warfare that almost no other man alive could perform. Tommy Prince became one of the most decorated Indigenous soldiers in Canadian history, and among the most decorated soldiers Canada produced in the whole of the Second World War. The recognition reached a height few soldiers of any background ever experience. Tommy Prince was summoned to Buckingham Palace, where King George VI himself personally presented him with his military medal and his American Silver Star. An Ojibwe man born into poverty on a Manitoba reserve, decorated by the King of England. It should have been the beginning of a hero's life. Instead, it was very nearly the high point, because the country Tommy Prince had fought for was waiting, when he came home, to remind him exactly what it still thought he was. When the war ended and Tommy Prince returned to Canada, he returned to the same discrimination he had left behind. The medals on his chest changed none of the laws and none of the attitudes. As an Indigenous man, he still faced barriers to work, to housing, to dignity, and to the basic rights that other veterans simply took for granted. A man who had fooled the German army dressed as a farmer, a man who had been honored by a king, struggled to find decent work and fair treatment in his own country, for no reason other than who he was. The hero of Anzio was, back home in Canada, treated as just another Indian, in the cold language of the time. Prince tried to fight that injustice too, speaking up for the rights of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous veterans. But the wider struggle for First Nations equality in Canada was still decades from being won, and one man's medals, however earned, could not move it on their own. And so, when war came again, in Korea, in 1950, Tommy Prince did what so many of these men did. He went back, he re-enlisted, joined the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, and served 2 tours in Korea, fighting with the very same skill and distinction he had shown in Italy and France years before. But Korea wore him down. The years of war damaged his knees and his body. The night raids, the cold, the endless marches all took their toll. He came home from his second war injured and aging, and no better treated by his country than he had been the first time. The last chapter of Tommy Prince's life is the hardest part of all to tell. The decorated commando, the man the king had honored with his own hands, slowly slid into poverty. His health failed, his marriage ended. He worked odd jobs, struggled, drifted, and fell on desperately hard times. At his lowest, Tommy Prince pawned his war medals, the military medal, the silver star, the bronze proof of everything he had done, simply to get by. The honors a king had pinned on his chest, sold for a little money to survive another month. Tommy Prince died on the 25th of November, 1977 in Winnipeg, at the age of 62, poor, ailing and living in a Salvation Army hostel. The ghost of Anzio ended his days nearly forgotten by the country he had served with such distinction in 2 separate wars. And then, right at the very end, Canada seemed to remember him. Hundreds of people came to his funeral, veterans, dignitaries, officers of the army he had served, representatives of foreign governments, and his own Ojibwe people. In death, the man so many had overlooked in life finally drew the crowd he had always deserved. In the years since, the honors have kept coming, late as they are. A statue of Tommy Prince stands in Winnipeg. Military barracks, a cadet program, scholarships, and a day of recognition all carry his name now. He has become a central symbol of Indigenous service in Canada and of the long injustice that met it. Because that is the double truth of Tommy Prince, and any honest telling has to hold both halves of it at once. He was a soldier of almost unbelievable skill and nerve who did things on the battlefield that few men in any army on earth could match. And he was a citizen his own country refused, for the whole of his life, to treat as an equal. He fought for a Canada that would not let him vote without surrendering who he was. He was honored by a king and abandoned by a system. He earned the medals with his own blood and nerve, and then had to sell them just to eat. An Ojibwe hunter who became a ghost between the lines. The farmer who wired an artillery strike under the enemy's nose. One of the most decorated soldiers Canada ever produced, and one it took far, far too long to honor. Sergeant Tommy Prince. If this story was worth your time, subscribe. We bring back one forgotten soldier every single day.